The Galactic Council had categorized humans as Class 3 sentients, intelligent, technological, but ultimately harmless. The classification was based on their relatively small stature, unimpressive physical abilities, and what appeared to be a disorganized planetary governance system. Humans were welcomed into the interstellar community, mainly as a curiosity. Perhaps they would provide interesting art or unique cuisine. Ambassador Trell of the Vorn Confederacy found humans particularly fascinating. His species, tall blue-skinned beings with 4 arms and protective exoskeletons, had dominated their corner of the galaxy for millennia. The Vorn were warriors by nature, though they had channeled this into diplomatic and economic conquests over the centuries. They seemed so soft. Trell remarked to his aide as they prepared for the first official human delegation aboard the Galactic Council station. I can't imagine how they survived their evolutionary process. The human delegation consisted of 5 representatives, 2 diplomats, a scientist, a cultural attaché, and, curiously, a military officer. The latter was introduced as Captain Jack Miller, a Marine from something called the United Earth Defense Force. Miller stood ramrod straight, his weathered face a mask of professional neutrality. Unlike the other humans who seemed excited, somewhat awed by the alien surroundings, Miller's eyes constantly scanned the room, assessing threats and exits. During the formal reception, Trell approached Miller, curious about this military human. "Your presence is interesting, Captain. Most emerging species send only diplomatic representatives," Trell said. Miller nodded. "Standard protocol, Ambassador. First contact scenarios always include military assessment." "Assessment?" Trell's upper arms gestured in amusement. "Surely your people don't consider themselves a military power by galactic standards." Miller took a sip from his drink, his eyes never leaving Trell's. "We're well aware of our technological disadvantages. That's never stopped humans before." The conversation might have ended there, but for an unfortunate incident 3 days later. A minor territorial dispute between the Vorn and the insectoid Krell erupted into a skirmish near the station. It was nothing serious by Council standards, merely a show of force that resulted in the destruction of an uninhabited Krell outpost. During the Council meeting called to address the incident, Miller sat quietly behind the human diplomats, listening as the Vorn representative justified their actions. The outpost was a military installation in disputed territory. The Vorn delegate explained, "We neutralized it efficiently, with minimal collateral impact." "You bombed it from orbit," countered the Krell representative, mandibles clicking in agitation, without warning or declaration. The Council mediator, a gaseous entity named XO, waved appendages of condensed vapor. "The Council recognizes the Vorn's right to protect their interests. Since no sentients were harmed, this matter is considered a minor infraction." To everyone's surprise, Miller raised his hand. The human diplomat, Tom Reed, looked concerned but nodded permission. "With respect," Miller said, standing, "I have a question about Council laws regarding combat." The chamber fell silent. Humans rarely spoke at these sessions. "Proceed, so permitted." "On Earth, we have something called the Geneva Conventions and other treaties that govern warfare," Miller explained. "They prohibit certain actions considered beyond acceptable military conduct, what we call war crimes." Several Council members exchanged confused glances. "War crimes," Trell repeated. "Warfare is inherently destructive. How can some destruction be criminal and other destruction acceptable?" Miller's expression remained impassive. "We distinguish between necessary military action and unnecessary cruelty. Bombing from orbit without warning, for instance, would violate our principles of proportional response and distinction between military and civilian targets." "But no one was killed," the Vorn delegate protested. "Intent matters," Miller continued, "as does method. We prohibit certain weapons entirely, chemical, biological, nuclear in most circumstances. We forbid torture, hostage-taking, targeting civilians, destroying cultural heritage sites, environmental destruction beyond military necessity." The Council chamber had gone completely still. "You mean," Trell said slowly, "that humans voluntarily limit their military options, even when such limitations might lead to defeat?" Miller nodded. We've learned the hard way that how you fight matters as much as whether you win. Fascinating, whispered Exo. And what happens to those who commit these war crimes? They face trial, punishment, sometimes execution, depending on the severity. We hold our own accountable, even our leaders. The Krell representative's antennae quivered. You execute your own military personnel for actions during warfare. When necessary, Miller confirmed. The alternative is worse. What alternative? Asked Trell, genuinely confused. Miller looked directly at him, becoming the kind of species that believes power justifies any action. The kind that bombs from orbit without warning. A murmur rippled through the council chamber. The human diplomats exchanged glances, realizing something fundamental had shifted. Later, in private, Trell confronted Miller. Your species appeared so harmless, small, fragile. Yet you speak of warfare with such intimacy. Miller's eyes betrayed a weariness beyond his years. Humans have been killing each other since we first picked up rocks. We've perfected it, industrialized it, theorized it. We've committed every atrocity imaginable against our own kind. The rules weren't created by the innocent. They were written in blood by those who saw the darkest potential of warfare. You frighten me, Captain, Trell admitted. Good, Miller replied quietly. We frighten ourselves. The next day, the Galactic Council revised Earth's classification from Class 3 to Class 1, potentially significant military threat. Humans weren't feared for their technology or their physical prowess. They were feared because they alone among the galactic species have looked into the abyss of their own capacity for destruction and chosen to place limits on it. Not out of weakness, but out of terrible experience.